Welcome, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us. So, today I'm really, really excited to have a bunch of young people in our local area, and we're going to look at the theme of resilience, but we're going to look at the resilience from a young person point of view. But before doing that, I think it would be nice to ask everyone to introduce who they are. And as you know, I'm your host today, and I'm Riyad Karabakas. I'm the head of community relations and development for Luton Council of Faith, and currently doing this videocast program. So I'm going to start perhaps with Nitin.
Yep, so I'm Nitin. I'm currently studying biology, chemistry and physics at Luton Sixth Form College. I come from a very strong Hindu background, very strong Indian culture as well. My aspirations are to study medicine quite soon. And I've also come from the Luton Youth Council, as well as also being a volunteer for Luton Council of Faith.
Brilliant, Nitin. Thank you very much for coming. And if I come with Isis.
Hi, I'm Isis. I'm 20 years old and I'm from the Baha'i community. I'm studying psychology in Buckingham at the moment, but living in Wellingborough.
If I can come to Dan.
Hi, I'm Dan. I'm a second year student at University of Oxford studying physics and philosophy. I'm currently living at home in Luton and I'm a Christian.
And Tamzid.
Hi, I'm Tamzid. I also attend Luton Sixth Form College where I study maths and physics. I'm the chair of the Luton Youth Council and I come from a Muslim Bengali background.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming, guys. I think today talk or discussion is about the word resilience and what do we understand by resilience. It's becoming very sexy these days. Everybody's talking about resilience. So, okay, young people need to be resilient, communities need to be resilient, climate change resilience, and all sorts of mental health resilience and all of that. So if I may ask, what does resilience mean for you as a group of young people? So if I may start with Tamzid.
For me, resilience, it's more important now than ever, given how difficult times are. And it's something I've had to remind myself because there's been a number of things that I plan to do that I can't anymore. And, it has been difficult and it's taken a toll on my mental health and my well-being in general and that of those I love. But for me, resilience is all about having that faith in yourself that no matter how tough it gets, that you can pick yourself up and then, get going anyway. Because the way I think of it is that whether you like it or not, time marches on. So you can either let it trample over you or you can join in and move forward with it. And, resilience is all about making sure that no matter how difficult it gets, you keep going, you keep giving it your best go, and you still try your best to accomplish what you want. Even if you come up a little short, it's okay. Give it another go next time.
Thank you very much, Tamzid. If I can come to Isis, so what do you understand by resilience? What does it mean for you?
For me, I guess it would be developing the tools to cope under unfamiliar circumstances. So one of the main things that helps me improve my resilience would be staying positive and grateful, even when things aren't going to plan and don't seem to be working out. So I guess it's easier said than done, but praying and keeping a strong relationship with God for me is important. Having good communication in my family and staying in touch with friends in my community, that really aids in resilience for me.
Thank you, Isis. If I can come to Dan, so what's your view on resilience as a young person?
Yeah, I 100% agree with what Tamzid and Isis was saying. For me, what comes to mind when thinking about resilience is the idea of, you keep pushing forward even in the face of much adversity, and you staying strong despite the odds being stacked against you. And that's that kind of idea of just keep getting back up, keep going, and not giving up, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Not giving up. And if I can, thank you for that, Dan. And Nitin, what's your view?
I think resilience for me is about never really giving in. I think it's natural that no matter where you go in life, no matter what pathway you take, you're going to meet countless numbers of setbacks. It's going to happen. No matter where you are on the ladder, you might be right at the top and you'll reach a setback just as if you're at the bottom. And I think resilience for me is looking at those setbacks, acknowledging that, okay, I have now been put back a couple of steps, but also saying to yourself that it doesn't matter whether it's easy. or difficult, or whether it's the most difficult thing I've ever done, I'm going to go out there and give it everything that I've got. And I'm going to go out there and I'm going to try and do it well. And that's what resilience is really for me.
Thank you very much. I find that quite powerful way of saying it, no matter what, I'm just going to do it. And I'm hearing that from all of you. But the question is probably how you muster courage and strength to face, if you want, those difficulties or that level of adversity. What really influences you, and how do you muster that courage? Maybe Isis, can you shed some light on that?
I'd say prayer would be the main thing that gives me courage, because it allows me to give up control and allows for what's meant to be to guide me. So putting all my faith in God, although it's really difficult and it takes time and practice, it helps me realize that like God's will is the main thing that aids everything that we do and guides us. And that's, yeah, I guess that's what gives me confidence that everything will work out.
Brilliant. And if I can come to Dan, so for you, Dan, how you muster that strength in the face of adversity?
I think it can kind of come from many different areas, whether it's from having supporting friends and family around you, really supporting you to do that. But also, like Isis was saying, a lot of it does come from prayer and from faith in God, basically, and the knowledge that however big these problems are, God is bigger and He does have your back. So I guess just taking strength from that and pushing forward, knowing that God is behind you, and that you can trust in Him in that. Okay,
I'm hearing that the concept of God is bigger, and I know that me myself coming from a Muslim background, I'm trying to come to Tamzeed. God is bigger means Allahu Akbar. That's what sometimes people say. How does that connect with you, Tamzeed, and this is how you muster strength about this something bigger than your problems?
Not particularly for me. I mean, I can obviously my parents, really do put their faith there, and I completely understand, and it's really nice to see how that can support someone. But for me, on a much more personal level, I think it's almost sort of the opposite, where equally it takes time and practice, but I've sort of tried my best to learn that no matter what the problem is, yes, it may be outside of my control, but the one thing that I do have control over is myself. I have agency over myself, over my choices and my decisions. So, the source of strength for me is really just taking some time to really process what's going on, making sure I understand what the problem is, how I feel about it, and then thinking really hard about how I want to feel about it, and then what I want to do afterwards, and how I want to deal with it and cope. And then it's just a matter of, forcing myself, even if I don't want to go out there and put into place whatever action I think is best for that situation. Because for me, there was a period of my life where I found it really very difficult to place any faith in myself and to believe myself capable of doing anything at all. So to then force myself to think that that's not on. You are a capable person and you will make it through this, I think for me is really the main source of strength when facing adversity.
Thank you very much, Tom. There's a question I'm going to ask you to all of you later. You are kind of address my curiosity a little bit about this whole idea of thinking and emotion, and I'm going to ask that question a bit later on. But if I can come to Nitin, and Nitin, how do you draw your strength?
I think for me, there's sort of two different levels to how I deal with my problems and adversity and setbacks. And I think that's the real key theme here is the setbacks. That phrase is very important because I think for me, I have to have a vision and I have to have a goal of where do I want to go. And I think the only way I ever show resilience is if I know where it is that I'm trying to go. And if I can visualize and see where the end goal is, then I can say, well, this setback isn't going to stop me because I see much greater things. I see the finished product of all the effort that I'm going to put in. So it doesn't matter if that means I have to do a little bit more extra work to get there, it's still worth it. And I think having that vision and goal really allows you to quantify the investment of time and energy and difficulty that you're going to put in for ultimately that reward. But I also think on a spiritual level, on a more personal belief in God, sort of falls slightly second to that, and that is the fact that God will assist me in putting in that effort and going through those difficulties. I mean, for me, I'm very aware of the fact that you can't just stay in one place and expect God to do things for you. You know, I think God is more so there to support you putting in that effort and that work towards it. So for me, it's about having that goal, finding that motivation, and the resilience will come from that. And it feeds off your goal and your vision. And faith works really together with that motivation, and it assists that resilience, and it helps keep that resilience strong. But for me to find resilience in the first place, I have to look elsewhere.
Listening to all of you guys, I'm hearing a lot about, I mean, you all come from very scientific background. I mean, some of you are studying physics, and one want to become a doctor. Isis want to be, I think is already studying psychology. Dan is want to become a physicist. And so you are all, and you know, Tamzid is studying mathematics and physics as well. But what I'm also hearing is also belief in God, belief in higher force and all of that. I mean, as a young person, Dan, how does it feel having that? I mean, again, I'm looking from that resilience point of view. You being a young person, especially studying hard science, and yet you're talking about God and spirituality. So how we know that very often it doesn't sound very, it sounds somehow old-fashioned. That's how people see faith and religion. So how do you cope with that? And I'm quite curious to hear from your point of view.
Yeah, I don't believe that you know, the knowledge we get from science in any way contradicts faith in God. I think they're two very valuable disciplines, and I think they work together quite harmoniously. I don't see a contradiction there. I think for me, especially studying physics, what I see in that is being able to really delve into the kind of the complexity and the beauty in nature, and really being able to get hands-on with, you know, how the universe works, which is really it's really fascinating. And then you can then marry that with my belief in God, in my faith in Christianity, which tells me you know, why this universe is here and the creator behind it and what his plan for it is. So they actually come together quite beautifully.
Mm-hmm. And talking about that synergy, Isis, so how do you find that synergy between your background as a Baha'i and science and belief in God, and as a young person?
Well, Baha'is really believe in the harmony of science and religion. It's one of the fundamental principles of the faith. So we believe that religion allows us to express divine reality, and then science allows us to investigate like our higher virtues and like intellectual achievement. So we don't really see a conflict between the two.
Mm-hmm. I can hear there's no conflict. If I come to Tamzid, so for you, Tamzid, how do you see yourself as a young Muslim and also engaging in the field of science? And then we're talking about religion and spirituality. Do you see a form of contradiction? Do you find it hard to be who you are from your identity point of view?
No, so I don't necessarily see a contradiction between it, because obviously, like, thinking back to history, you know, Islam as a faith in the Middle East provided a huge driving force towards scientific innovation, you know, in the 8th and 9th centuries. You know, we call it the Islamic Golden Age for a reason. And obviously, being someone who's quite into maths, you know, I'm aware that the words like, you know, that a word like algorithm, algebra, they're both derived from either Arabic words or name of Arab scholars at the time. So I don't necessarily see, because I don't see a contradiction between them, because especially in Islam, there is this huge focus on the fact that, you know, Islam says that, you know, this is God's creation. It is beautiful. It is your privilege and duty to go out and explore it and understand it. And I think that really, if anything, encourages scientific discoveries rather than contradicts them. If it weren't for religious institutions throughout history, I don't think we would know as much as we do now. Religion in one way or another did power scholarship for a lot of human history.
That's quite powerful. You're saying religion and did power scholarship over history. If I come to Nitin, you come from a Hindu background. So tell us a little bit more about your view in this area.
Well, I see the two as almost like the perfect marriage for me, because what I see in science.
You mean the perfect rishta, yeah?
Yeah, of course, the perfect rishta. Yeah, definitely one of the better ones out there. For me, I think science actually in some aspects proves my faith or gives me a reason to hold faith in certain things, because I think no matter what religions you look at, because obviously I've done a couple of years of work with yourselves, I've been able to see and get insight into other religions that are out there, and actually what you see is the fundamentals are very, very similar, if not the same, and I always like saying that to people who say that they don't hold any faith or anything, and I say, well, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to assign yourself to any one religion, but I think the main moral concepts, even if you are an atheist, let's say, usually stand, and people usually tend to go for them. But I also think that science in some areas can actually act as a proof for certain concepts and things like that. I mean, there's plenty of things that I've learned in physics and biology and chemistry at A level, and not one of them has ever made me think, oh, that goes against Hindus. It's never really happened to me. I mean, if we can believe that God's created so many different things, and the natural earth that we're on, and all these things that we have now, like the technologies and computer chips, all these things has literally come from that starting point. Well, science says the same thing. It's come from the start. They were found in rocks, in ores and things like that. We were able to create these things. So I think, to me at least, I really love the fact that I do science, because I think it marries very well with my own personal faith and beliefs. And actually, I like looking at sciences in a way of, let's find out what we don't know. And a lot of the time, religion is just trying to fill that gap as well, or has a concept that is just trying to educate us in that same way. So fundamentally, I don't see much difference. I never really have.
And it's very often what we hear, it's a language issue, isn't it? Religion had a language over years, and today we have the language of science, and how we bring that rishta together, that marriage, that perfect marriage that you talk, Nitin. It's something quite fascinating to explore and to be in a state of awe, as you mentioned earlier. So if I can come to probably the question of inspiration, is there an inspirational story, let's say in your faith, in your tradition, or someone who really inspire you as a young person to build that resilience? What would you say if I come to ISIS?
So the manifestation of God for the Baha'i faith is Baha'u'llah, and he spent a lot of time in prison, a prison called the Siyachal in Persia, and he had chains around his neck, which were the weight of another human. He was there for months on end, and it's been said to be the worst prison in the world. And I guess what inspires me about stories from when he was in this prison was how he really uplifted and created the best atmosphere he could through prayer and positivity with everyone around him in the prison. And yeah, I guess some of the prayers that he said in that prison are what help me when I'm facing difficulties, and guide me through challenges. Yeah.
And I really like the image you painted in our mind, like how the chain was as heavier than a human being, and he was carrying that in the worst prison that you're talking about. And yet, how he, with his words, that today I think we have 300 million Baha'is in the world practicing the faith. So, which actually he has inspired, I think, people, not just Baha'is, but beyond Baha'is, to some of his teachings and philosophies, and really showing resilience. And if I can come to Tamzid, so what sort of inspiration that you take from, let's say, anyone or your scripture or something that really inspire you to drive forward, to have that resilience?
For me, I think it's difficult to place a finger on any one example because if you take a step back and take like a holistic approach and just have a look at everything, you see that the one constant across history is we're curious as a society, as a species. If we think more specific about Islam, I take my mind back to the House of Wisdom in Baghdad. It's the idea that these religious leaders felt the need to take ancient texts in Greek and I forget what other languages, but dedicate an entire building in their capital to just translating these and to spreading that knowledge and providing a platform for those who seek to learn to formulate their own ideas, to discuss their own theories. And the idea that, again, religion powers these things. If it wasn't such a focus that, we want to go out and learn about the world that we live in, whether or not, whether or not we want to learn it because it's God's creation or because it's just beautiful, maybe both. But the fact that we are able to learn about it and the fact that we are endlessly curious as a species is just inspiring and kind of amazing to me in general. And it provides me with that sort of desire to, I want to contribute to that.
So we're hearing that desire to learn, that thirst of learning from Baghdad to Persia. And what about Dan? So what is your thirst of learning? What is your thirst of inspiration for you?
I think when it comes to resilience, at least, one image that comes to mind quite often is, I don't know, have you seen The Lord of the Rings?
Yes.
There's the part in the third film where the two main characters, Frodo and Sam, are walking through this, this harsh desert land, trying to get to the volcano to destroy the ring. And everyone is relying on them, like the whole world is relying on them, and it's just tough. They're starved, they're parched, they're exhausted, and they're on the verge of collapsing. And they just keep going. And even when Frodo, the one who's carrying the ring, actually, passes out, he faints, he can't go any further. His friend Sam picks him up, puts him on his shoulders, and just keeps like walking up the mountain, keeps pushing. So despite all this adversity, all this nightmarish problems that they're having to face, they just keep going, keep pushing. And that's a really, really kind of strong image for me in terms of being resilient and just keeping going.
Again, what a beautiful painting in terms of looking at the Lords of the Rings. So if I come to Nitin, what's your story? What's your story of inspiration for you to build that resilience?
I mean, I think for me, a lot of it has to start from what you've learned in your own life as well. I mean, everyone probably has a regret at some point in their past where they thought, do you know what, if I put in just a tiny bit more effort, or if I kept going, I could have achieved that thing. And I think for me, the worst feeling ever is, I think you'd never want to fail because you didn't try hard enough. And I think that knowing that feeling once in your life and saying to yourself, I'm not going to let that happen again, is a really big motivator. I think it was Muhammad Ali back in the day when he was training and he was working out. An interviewer basically asked him, so how many sit-ups do you actually do? And he said, I don't know, because I only start counting when it starts burning. Now, isn't that I think for me, that is literally the biggest form of resilience that I've seen in the modern world. But if you want to take it more spiritual, if you look back at the Ramayana, when Lakshman, who is Ram's brother, is injured in battle and they need a certain herb or fruit, or I believe it actually was a herb, from a certain island to be able to heal him and, of course, save his brother. So they give this task to Hanuman, who's extremely smart and wise and strong in our faith. And, he represents all those things to the Hindu community. And they say, we need you to go and find this herb and fruit. Now, when Hanuman gets to that island, he doesn't know which one he's looking for. There's so many there that he gets confused. He doesn't know which one to bring back, and he can't bring back all of them, can he? So what he does is he uses all of his abilities, his strength, and his his wit, and he picks up the entire island And there's a very famous pose that we have in our idols of him, where he picks up the entire island in one hand and comes back with the entire island and presents it to whoever's looking for that fruit. And I just think sometimes resilience isn't actually always about the hard work like it was with Muhammad Ali. Sometimes it's about finding that alternative route to still achieve the same thing. You know, I mean, I know there's plenty of doctors out there who may not have got in the first time, so they do a different degree and then they go and specialize further. And next thing you know, they have that title now and they're working in a hospital and they're a doctor. And, you know, I think that's literally just a modern example of the same thing that happened in the Ramayana, is finding that alternative route and knowing that resilience doesn't always have to mean an extremely grueling task. It can actually just mean engaging some of the bits that go up there to find the smarter option.
Brilliant. I really like the way you're connecting that the ancient story to modern day and actually create a transition with Muhammad Ali and then talking about your future, talking about medicine. And I like this idea of finding new and alternative ways. As I said earlier, Tamzid really attracted my curiosity about talking about thoughts and emotions. If I can come to you, Tamzid, it might sound a bit of a hard question to ask, but how do you build how you bring perhaps harmony between thoughts and emotion to bring that resilience, that peace perhaps in your daily life? Is there something you could share with us?
I'm notorious for taking obscenely long showers because I use them as an opportunity to just reflect on what's happened that day, what's happened in the past week, and really just kind of examine my emotions and really like, I think one of the most important things just throughout life is to understand what's going on inside your head, because often things will happen that make us feel a certain way and we don't know what it is we're feeling. Are we angry? Are we frustrated? You know, what's going on? And it's important to be able to put words to those emotions. And once you can identify what's going on, you can start working on it. You can start then addressing it. If you're unhappy, you can then start thinking about, well, what is it that's making me unhappy? Let me take some time out of my day. Let me just take a step back, think about it for a second, and then it may take some time, may take a couple of days, weeks, months, whatever. But eventually, you should get to a point where you can then identify what the problem is, and then you can figure out how to address it. And then hopefully you'll come out of it a healthier, happier person.
Thank you for sharing that. We hear that it's all about expressing and words, and we know that words create worlds. And I'm curious about Dan. I can see that you're like a bit of a musician. Is that how you express words and emotions together?
To tell the truth, I'm not the best musician. I don't play often. I wouldn't say that it's how I kind of express words and emotions, how I'm feeling. But I do resonate a lot with what Tamzid was saying about, you know, needing to be intentional and kind of, you know, have some time to actually figure out what it is that's going on with you right now. Understanding, you know, where you are, what's happening, where you're trying to get to, and just being aware of that throughout daily life, because it's very easy to just kind of get blown along by life and just not really know what's going on and just kind of go through the motions, and then suddenly realize, hang on, how did I get here? What's happening? So whether that's through, you know, mindfulness or meditation or prayer, just being able to kind of ground yourself and actually, I guess, be introspective and realize, okay, where am I? Where do I kind of want to get? And what am I going to do? How am I going to move forward and improve? I think that's really important. For me personally, I like to just take like a really long hot bath and just almost just kind of, it's kind of, I guess you could say it's kind of like meditation, but just like, just lying there, like just alone with my thoughts and just trying to kind of figure out and then plan the week ahead and just, yeah, assess where I'm at and where I can move on from.
So we're saying a common theme among already bath and showers. And what about you, Isis? Is you also have you also take and it's very true. We know it from, I mean, you're a psychologist. We know that very often, you know, in the shower, there's a lot of inspiration because actually you're activating your rest and digest instead of your flight and fight. But what about you? For you, how does it work? How do you connect emotions and thoughts and bringing a harmony and synergy to that?
I think for me, I guess it would be keeping a good routine. There would be two main things like that are important in my routine, I'd say, are expressing gratitude and meditating and thinking, well, reflecting on my day at the end of every day, thinking about how I acted, what I think, what virtues I hold to be important and whether they were manifested in how I behaved in that day. It just helps, I guess, to become a better person each and every day if you're improving and reflecting on how you've been.
So,
a quote that I think is quite important from the Baha'i writings says, "O son of being, bring thyself to account each day, ere thou art summoned to a reckoning." So I think that's quite important to reflect each day.
So that's really beautiful. Like bring yourself into account, and I think what you're saying, you shower yourself with gratitude. Which is very important, especially today we're talking about mindfulness. I'm more into heartfulness rather than mindfulness because, and that's why I'm asking this question: is how do we connect the mind and emotions together? And if I come finally to Nitin, what do you have to say about this?
I think for me, the way I connect, emotions is usually with other people. I mean, for me, I know for a lot of people, it's much more of a solo process. And I think there's definitely a big part of that where it is. I mean, for me, when I was in the, during the pandemic and everything, my two main ways where I used to have some time alone with my thoughts or actually just have a moment where I'm not thinking about the stresses of life was during archery and karate, both of which suffered during the pandemic because we went from lockdown to lockdown to lockdown. And what I realized is that although those used to be two very robust things in my life that I could count on, I no longer had those. So for me, what was once a solo process in terms of just, finding something else to think about, because then when you come back and you spend some time with yourself, it's always so much easier. It's always so much more simpler to understand what's going on in your mind and what's going on in your head, but also to realize what your gut instinct is for each point that you might have been stressing over. And for me, what happened during the pandemic was I started putting a lot more trust into talking to other people about things, and I think it's always a lot easier to talk to someone else because I think as humans we have a tendency to be quite harsh on ourselves. So it can be quite dangerous sometimes actually in certain situations to just say I'm going to think about this all completely by myself and go through it all by myself and see if I can help myself, because actually what happens is sometimes you don't help the situation because you are your I think humans are our own biggest critics, and we always will be. You always judge your actions more than probably someone else's, simply out of the fear of being judged in the first place. So I turn to my friends mostly and family members whenever appropriate to just talk about the situation, tell them what's going through my head. And I think the biggest fear most people have is sharing what's going on in their head with other people, but the hardest part is just starting that conversation. And after that, things start to flow, and once you've left that conversation, everything is a lot more simpler.
So what I'm hearing from you, Nitin, is that flow of connection, that's showering with connection and engaging with people. So I think we are reaching to the end of our time, but just as a final thought from what we've all heard today about your views around resilience. So any final thought you would like to share to our listeners before we say goodbye? So Tamzid?
I guess mostly just reiterating what we said this whole time, right? Where, find your source of strength, find your source of, find whatever method works for you to help you figure out what your emotions are, whether it's socializing like Nitin or it's just some introspection like myself. If you find what works for you, it's going to be difficult. It's going to take some time. It's going to take a couple of attempts, but it's all about finding whatever works best for you, and then after you find that, everything else becomes a lot clearer and a lot easier, and resilience comes it becomes a lot easier to come by.
Thank you. And Dan, what's your message for today?
For me, resilience doesn't mean, becoming some sort of Superman and just going from success to success and just, being unstoppable. Because, you are going to take hits. There are going to be bad days. You are going to, fall short. Resilience is after that happens, just getting right back up and keeping going. It's like Muhammad Ali said, it's not about how hard you hit. Wait, no, that's a Rocky quote. It's not about how hard you can hit, it's how hard you can get hit and then keep moving forward. So it's about, even after taking those hits, even after, having those bad days, it's just jumping right back on the horse and just keeping moving forward. I think that's what resilience is for me.
And what about you, Isis? What's your message for today?
Similar to what's been said, really. It's just keeping on going, having a good routine, reflecting on a personal improvements, because that will shine and inspire other people when you can be knocked down and keep going, keep persevering. And I really like the word shining, and how do we shine finally with you, Nitin, today?
Well, I'm just going to say, I think it's very important that you think positively and that you're kind to yourself. I think people will show resilience in so many different ways and never give themselves credit for it. It might be that one day where your alarm's gone off and you just think, oh gosh, I don't want to go out there. I want to stay here where it's warm and it's safe and everything is easy. But you still get up and you get change and you go out there, and that is a form of resilience. And I think a lot of people don't give themselves that credit. And I think when you do give yourself that credit, it becomes easier to be resilient when things get even more tough, because you start to believe in yourself, and it all comes from within primarily. You have to take that first step, and then other things will come and help you. You can draw more inspiration from other people, and you can draw inspiration from faith, but you'll never be able to do that unless you take that first step. So definitely be kind to yourself and acknowledge where you've done something resilient.
So what I'm hearing, Nitin, is this very concept about, you're talking about this little step, that kindness, and what we've heard very often is that a little daily action can lead to a revolution, and that's what I think I would like to end for today. So I want to say thank you very much to everyone for your input today. It's been really wonderful to have your views, your voice, and hopefully you can enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you on another time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.